Hello, I'm Jonasz Rawiński. Welcome on board the Eastern Express. As always, I hope it is a journey to remember. Now, in this episode, we venture into the seemingly paradoxical world of international diplomacy, where the line between a terrorist organization and a dialogue partner is as thin as walls in a cheap motel. Picture this. Russia, the country that has spent the better part of the last 2 decades painting itself as a bulwark against terrorism, is now engaging in what it calls an active dialogue with Afghanistan's ruling Taliban. Yes, the same Taliban that until very recently featured prominently on Moscow's list of terrorist organizations. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, with a straight face, deserving of an Oscar, told reporters that because Afghanistan is their neighbor, dialogue is necessary. There is no international pariah state that Putin's Russia won't shake hands with, I suppose. So let's take a look at our report to find out more before we delve deeper into the subject at hand.
Russia is working to remove the Taliban from its list of terrorist organizations, citing the need for dialogue with Afghanistan's current rulers. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov stated that they had pressing issues that required communication.
Afghanistan is a country that is near us. One way or another, we do have communication with them. We need to solve the pressing issues which demands a dialogue. We communicate with them just like everyone, and de facto, the Taliban are in power in Afghanistan.
This decision comes in the wake of a recent deadly terrorist attack attributed to ISIS Khorasan, a group operating either under the influence of the Taliban in Afghanistan or Pakistan. While Russia attributes radical Islamists to being involved in this attack, it considers ISIS to be a deceptive flag under which Russia's global rivals conceal themselves.
So Russia is a long-standing enemy of the broader jihadist community. If you go way back to the struggle in Afghanistan against the Soviet Union, but then in the 1990s, the probably number one hotspot in the world for jihad was Chechnya. And Russia, even after largely winning in Chechnya, has been fighting an ongoing, very low-level counterinsurgency campaign in the broader Caucasus.
This move could signal a shift in Russia's stance towards the Taliban regime. It remains to be seen if the group will be delisted and what the pressing issues for discussion might be.
And now, as always, it's time to take a look at the issue in greater detail. So, let's begin. These latest revelations come hot on the heels of a tragic event, the storming of a concert hall outside Moscow that left at least 144 people dead, marking the deadliest terrorist attack in Russia in 2 decades. The Islamic State claims responsibility, with US intelligence pointing fingers at ISIS Khorasan, the group's Afghan branch. Meanwhile, President Vladimir Putin decides this is the perfect time to accuse Ukraine of being behind the attack, a claim as sturdy as a house of cards in a tornado. Peskov, when pressed about the possibility of the Taliban being delisted as a terrorist organization, plays coy, suggesting everyone wait until this process comes to an end. It's like watching a political thriller, but you're not really sure if the scriptwriter started taking plot advice from a roulette wheel, perhaps a Russian roulette at that. Now, the Taliban, back in power in Afghanistan since the US-led troops withdrew, remains unrecognized by the world, with their governance marked by exclusion and sweeping restrictions on women's rights. Yet Russia extends an invitation to them for an economic forum, signaling a warming of relations, or at least a practical acknowledgement of their power in Afghanistan. On one hand, the removal from a terror blacklist could signal a path towards normalization, an opportunity for dialogue and, dare we say, peace. But on the other hand, it raises eyebrows sky high, prompting a collective "what's the catch?" from the global audience. In a world where strange bedfellows doesn't even begin to cover it, the idea that Russia and the Taliban could move from the naughty list to a nice-ish list poses a multitude of questions. Critics argue that such moves could whitewash years of conflict and complicity in acts that have had devastating consequences. Supporters might see it as a pragmatic step towards stabilization in regions plagued by endless conflict. Between these perspectives lies a vast, murky grey area filled with ifs, buts, and maybes. We'll explore what this means for global diplomacy, with the implications for peace and conflict. One thing's for certain, such a rewarming of ties is bound to spark a reaction from the international community. And now we'll be discussing just that with our guest today, Marcin Krzyżanowski, former Polish consul to Afghanistan. Hello and welcome to Eastern Express.
Hello, thank you for the invitation.
So, a terrorist group? No more. Apparently the Taliban is moving up in the world, at least in the Russian world. But just how profound would it be for both the Taliban and for Russia if the Taliban is struck off the list of terrorist groups which Russia maintains?
And it would be the very important step on the way to official recognition of the Taliban regime in Kabul. No country at the moment officially recognized them, but a few countries accepted Taliban diplomats as envoys in the embassies. For example, Russia, China, Pakistan, and Iran.
So overall, Russia is among these countries, right? And definitely there have been certain relations taking place. But would you say that Russia has been at the very top of countries which are supportive of the Taliban, at least unofficially? There have been reports that in economic terms, at least, Russia is in fact lagging behind.
Definitely, yes. Russia is, if Russia is a leader by any means in the relations with Afghanistan, governed by Taliban, it's the field of policy. In the terms of economy, in the terms of investment, and in the terms of local cooperation, as you said, Russia is way behind China, not to mention Pakistan and Iran.
So how much influence can Russia really exert there? Because this has been a renewed issue. It has regained significance following the attack on the Crocus City Hall, for which ISIS-K has claimed responsibility. So if we disregard the false narratives that Russia has been spinning in order to implicate Ukraine in that, which of course is really nonsense. I mean, ISIS-K has essentially said, no, we did that. So if Russia wants to really take action against this Islamic organization, would it really have any sort of leverage over the regime in Kabul in order to do so? I mean, it's not like the current Taliban government is in any way friendly towards ISIS, quite the opposite. But apart from this commonality of interests, is there anything else that Russia could put on the table to encourage them to take action?
No, of course, first thing that should be put on the table is the official recognition, the highest price Taliban are eager to achieve. But at the moment, there is no chance for that. So for Russia, for example, technical or military cooperation is also interesting asset. Intelligence cooperation and technical cooperation in the field of industry. Afghanistan is a country which is not industrialized. So even with small investment, the significant progress can be made. And Russia is able to provide technical support and limited financial support to Taliban. As I said, for the level of Afghanistan, it would be enough to incent to further and deeper cooperation. Especially that the Taliban regime is ready and eager to end the issue of Islamic State Khorasan province.
So you said that for the time being, official recognition by Russia is out of the question. Why would that be so? I mean, we can probably discount the issue of, let's just say, common values, Western values. Namely, a couple of decades ago, Russia might have tried to get in line with other countries of the West and try to exhibit at least this sort of overall recognition for these values. But now it doesn't really seem that Russia cares anymore. It is willing to side with countries such as Iran and North Korea. And so what would it do to Russia? Would it hurt in any way for Russia to be the first country that recognizes the Taliban, which for us in the West sounds unimaginable, but for them...
That's true that Russia is no more, maybe not even, never was an ally, but at least wasn't clear enemy. But still, Taliban are considered as kind of a pariah state because of their terrorist background. Official recognition would incite the other terrorist groups. At the moment, the Taliban in Pakistan, the Taliban in Pakistan, is willing to topple down secular government in Islamabad, as the Afghan Taliban did with Kabul government. So that's the main obstacle for the official recognition. However, in next couple of months, maybe a year or two, the situation may change enough to recognize and make Russia more ready, more eager to officially recognize Taliban government.
So speaking of Afghanistan, you said a pariah state with a terrorist background. For some, it may actually sound awfully like Russia nowadays, given what it is doing in Ukraine. But sarcasm aside, what does Russia stand to gain from closer cooperation with Afghanistan? Are there any interests that it may further? And also, if Russia was to step in big time, economically, into Afghanistan, would it have to face any sort of opposition from other countries which are already well established there, including China and Iran, which are not exactly hostile towards Russia, obviously, but they may have competing interests?
Definitely they have competing interests, but Afghanistan is to some extent, from the point of view of investor, a vast empty space. So there's space. So there is enough room for China, Iran, and Russia to invest or to cooperate without direct competition. Besides that, Afghanistan tends to be diverse into three main zones: northern, close to Central Asia, western, with deep ties with Iran, and of course southern, closely tied to Pakistan, and by that indirectly to China. So there is a space, there is a lot of opportunities, but of course a lot of dangers for potential economical cooperation, and those dangers like lack of a clear law, lack of bureaucratic procedures, etc., made the potential investors vary about the possibilities to make a profits in Afghanistan.
Would you think that this situation will make the Taliban reluctant to even try and make a case for itself on the broader international forum? I mean, if it has allies, or quasi-allies at least, in the form of China, Russia, Iran, so regional powers willing to invest there, would it even care about the recognition from Western countries? I mean, we often speak about this sort of limbo of non-recognition, but beyond the question of humanitarian aid, is there anything else that the Taliban could be interested in? And on the other hand, would we still have any leverage over Afghanistan if we allow it to fall completely into the sphere of influence of these regional powers?
We would lose any kind of leverage. At the moment, our leverage is limited, not to say very weak, but still exists. With Russia and China possible investments in Afghanistan, the Taliban would be totally independent from the Western humanitarian aid. So our presence will be no longer necessary nor possible.
So it's an interesting dilemma in a way, isn't it? I mean, Do you think that the West has made any sort of major mistake? I mean, one could claim that there were many along the way. What was the worst one which has led to this very situation in which we were trying to foster democracy in Afghanistan for decades, literally? And right now it seems that this country is completely lost to us, at least in terms of us being able to exert any sort of cultural influence, protect minorities, and so on.
Unfortunately, at the very beginning of our operation in Afghanistan in 2001 to 2003, we relied on old warlords, our former allies from the time of anti-Soviet jihad and anti-Taliban operation. Unfortunately, warlords weren't interested in democracy or fighting corruption, as they were corrupt mostly and anti-democratic. So we created, unfortunately, only facade of democracy that disappoints a vast majority of Afghan civil society. We also, at the beginning, decided to sideline not only Taliban, but the groups loosely connected to Taliban, and by that we alienated a huge portion of Afghan society, which in turn started to support Taliban, and with strong local support, Taliban were able to start a very aggressive and successful insurgency in Afghanistan, and that led to our, let's be honest, defeat in there.
Unfortunately, the collapse of the previous government was quite spectacular and quick also. I mean, this is something that was still remains probably shocking to many analysts, that the situation could have changed so quickly. And now, as we've seen, Afghanistan remains in the sphere of influence of countries such as Russia and China, not likely to return to our sphere of influence, if we should even use that term, anytime soon. Marcin Krzyżanowski was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your expertise.
Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
And now we're moving on to Eastern News Flash, bringing you all the other stories from the East that you really don't want to miss. Citing high-ranking Ukrainian officials, British newspaper The Guardian says that Ukraine is reportedly planning a renewed assault on the Crimean Bridge in the first half of this year. The bridge, built illegally and connecting Russia with the illegally occupied Crimea, has been instrumental in Russia's efforts to occupy the peninsula.
According to Ukrainian intelligence source, Kyiv has already secured most of the resources needed to carry out an attack on Kerch Bridge. The Guardian suggests that this operation is part of a plan approved by President Volodymyr Zelensky to minimize Russia's presence in the Black Sea. However, there are serious doubts about HUR's ability to execute a special operation against such a well-defended target. Russia has taken extensive measures to protect the bridge, reinforcing its air defenses and deploying submerged barges to block drone access, as reported by the newspaper. Since the full-scale invasion began, Ukraine has twice targeted the Crimean Bridge. In October 2022, a truck passing over the bridge exploded, damaging the railway infrastructure and destroying several spans. A second explosion occurred in the summer last year. Despite these attacks, however, the bridge is still fully operational.
Belarus has announced the introduction of a new subject called Alphabet of Morality into the curriculum for second and third graders. The program, approved by the Belarusian Ministry of Education, aims to instill socially significant personality traits among young students.
The Ministry of Education of Belarus explained that the new subject addresses the need to what they call disseminate universal humanistic values, cultural and spiritual traditions of the Belarusian people, and state ideology. The target age group for this program is 7 to 10 years old, considered a sensitive period for absorbing social norms and forming significant personality traits. By the end of the course, second graders should know how to behave during the singing of the Belarusian national anthem, identify national symbols, and understand the meaning of proverbs about the homeland. Third graders will focus on learning moral feelings of duty and honor and will be required to know the names of Belarusian student heroes from the Great Patriotic War, further integrating historical and cultural education to the curriculum.
Presidents Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine and Alexander Stubb of Finland have signed a significant long-term security agreement. The pact encompasses military and financial aid for Kyiv, yet again demonstrating Finland's commitment to supporting Ukraine in countering Russian aggression.
Welcome. How are you?
Finland has signed a 10-year security agreement with Ukraine, committing to continued military and economic assistance. President Alexander Stubb announced an additional 188 million euros in military aid, including air defense system and ammunition, bringing Finland's total contribution to Ukraine's defense since 2022 to nearly 2 billion euros. The agreement outlines long-term support for Ukraine's defense against Russia's ongoing invasion, as well as its reconstruction efforts. Ukraine has been heavily reliant on Western military aid, particularly air defense systems, to counter Russia's superior military force. Finland, which shares a long border with Russia and recently joined NATO, is also preparing a 290 million euro four-year plan to support Ukraine's development and reconstruction.
Georgia's ruling party has reignited controversy by reintroducing a bill that would force charities, advocacy groups and opposition media to register as foreign agents if they receive foreign funding. This move comes just over a year after massive public protests forced the government to shelve the legislation.
The streets of Tbilisi might soon look like this once again. NGOs likely to be targeted by the law accuse the government of emulating the Russian playbook, emphasizing their refusal to be labeled spies and highlighting their work as patriots striving to improve the country. The European Union has also condemned the proposal, stating it contradicts Georgia's stated goal of joining the bloc and clashes with EU values. This effort to brand critics as foreign agents follows another controversial bill introduced last week that would criminalize the promotion of same-sex relationships, mirroring similar legislation in Russia. The move raises concerns about Georgia's commitment to human rights advancements, especially as it seeks EU membership.
And for this episode of Eastern Express, it's the end of the line. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news and updates. I'm Jan Czerwiński. Bye for now.